Welcome to the Rewilded Human Podcast, where Dr. Lucille, holistic psychiatrist and psychotherapist, and Dr. Lynn, naturopath and nutritional consultant, help you reconnect with your true self through practical tips on mental health, nutrition, exercise, relationships, and spirituality. With a dash of humor, they tackle today's toughest issues to guide you back to a harmonious, vibrant life. Rediscover your natural self, just as nature intended.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Rewilded Human Podcast. And today, I, Dr. Lucille, and my lovely and very wise podcast partner, Dr. Lynn, are going to talk about a very sensitive subject, which is how do you talk to people who are struggling with cancer? First of all, why do we want to talk about this, Lynn? Why would this be such an important topic?
Well, it just seems like cancer rates are skyrocketing at the moment. I have never in my life seen so many people become ill, die super quickly, young people, old people. My parents live in a small village and like 700 people, and there's funerals every week. It's just unbelievable what's happening. I think we don't really need to talk about why this is happening, because those who know, and those who don't know will never understand. But basically, I think we're here to support people no matter what they're going through.
Absolutely.
And no matter how they got there. And it's super hard for people with family members right now who are suffering. And I think it's really, really challenging because people just don't know how to relate to someone when they come to you and they say, I've been diagnosed, and how to react, how to talk to them, how to be compassionate, how to handle the situation.
Absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely right about the skyrocketing number of cases of cancer. So it's going to be very rare for anybody not to run into this situation right now. And in my work with clients, I have run across so many horrific stories about how people deal with those who are dying, and not just with cancer, but with any dread disease. And so we have to remember that the person who's got cancer is on a very unique journey, especially if they've been diagnosed as terminal and they know they're heading towards death. It's a very unique journey and an incredibly lonely one, because they can't take anybody with them. It's just, you don't take companions on this journey. They are on their own. One thing that is really important to notice and realize and be aware of is that this can be very frightening, not only for the person who's got the cancer diagnosis, but the people around them, because it strikes the fear of God, if you want to call it that, in everybody. And you will notice that people some of them go completely crazy, and their behavior starts changing in ways that you wouldn't have expected. So family members start arguing with one another. People in the family start drinking, or they start spending lots of money, or they stop coming to see the person who's got cancer. And when you would never have expected that they do that. So one of the things that is really important is look at your own fears and your belief systems around death and dying. And really try to be aware and responsible, and not bring that into your conversations with the person with the diagnosis. And unfortunately, a lot of people are really unconscious about their stuff. They're really unconscious about all their fears, their stories, their projections, and they just let it rip. So I'll tell you a story about my mother was dying of cancer, but this is, many years ago, and she was thankfully in a beautiful hospice where the staff there were like angels. They were so attentive, so caring, and so expert at dealing with those who are dying. What happened was there was a family that I befriended while I was coming to visit my mother, and their father was dying. And they were a lovely, lovely group of people, but I began to hear stories about how one of the daughters was arriving drunk every time she came to visit her father. She was drunk, she was rowdy, she picked fights with the other family members, and people were tearing their hair out, not knowing what to do with her. They were families that, this had caught them unaware that they knew eventually their father would be dying, but they were totally unaware of the toll it would take on everybody emotionally. And the problem with that kind of situation is that the staff in a hospice can somehow help people. They can, take them aside and talk to them and soothe them and help, but they can't do everything. And so when you've got family members at odds with one another, it impacts on the death process, the dying process for the loved one. Because they can, even if nothing is said in the room, they can sense the tension, right? They can sense the tension. So that is one example, and that's very common. So people need to be aware. They can't go into this just blindly thinking, oh, well, I'll just go visit Uncle George and, pay my respects and blah, blah, blah. They have to be really aware of their own trauma around dying, their own experiences of other people passing, the stories, especially religious stories they have in their heads, all of the, I'm going to call it propaganda around death and dying, and whether you're supposed to do mainstream medicine or you're supposed to do the natural route or blah, blah, blah. You just have to be aware of your stuff.
I think that's a very good point, Lucille, what you brought up about, different treatments, because I think the first thing people tend to do, and I know that people find this really, really annoying, is everybody will come at you. Oh, you just need to take this. Oh, you just need to take vitamin C. Oh, I saw this thing. You just need to take 5 of those pills and it'll go away. And everyone's going to come at you with the latest. And I know from experience in dealing with people that they hate that. It's like, do not give, I think this would be number one for me. Do not give any unsolicited
advice. Yeah. I totally agree with you. I have had people say to me, because they knew I was safe to talk to, people who are dying, who are saying, I can't stand these people coming at me, telling me what I'm supposed to be doing. I want them all to go away. I just want them all to go away and stop bothering me, right? And it becomes such a drain. Like, it is a draining process to die. Plus, it's so draining for you to be bombarded with everybody's opinion. And the person who's dying doesn't necessarily want to come out and say F you.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to lose their supports either. So it is really important. And I think you said a really important word there, Lynn, unsolicited. If you strongly feel that there's something that would help this person, please at least just ask them first. Would you like to hear something that I think might help you?
Yeah.
And if they say no, please respect it and go away. Right?
Exactly. And I'm guilty of that because, I want to help everyone, and I feel like I have a lot of knowledge in this field. And so, of course, sometimes you can't help it, but try to force your views because you want to save them, and you think you can, but it's not your job. It's, if they're not asking for your help, then it's not your job.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to have great respect for their autonomy, to choose whatever they want to do. And the other thing too is to recognize that they're the most important person in this experience, not you, not anybody else. So if you've ever had to practice listening more than speaking, this is the time to do it. Another thing we tend to do instinctively is kind of cheer the person up and jolly them up. And if they start saying something that sounds depressive or, despairing or whatever, we rush in there to give them some hope and cheer them up. And you don't have to feel that way. Everything's going to be fine. And you never know, maybe you'll get better in the next week or so, and that's also extremely draining for the person who's got the condition, because then they feel like they can't talk to you.
It's
You're
almost
just
it's almost
it's
patronizing because
patronizing.
that person
Yeah.
knows for a fact that they are dying, and then someone's telling them, "Oh, have faith, you're gonna get better, or just keep praying and it'll go away,"
Yeah.
or right,
Yeah.
and it's just gonna make you feel like crap even more.
Yeah, and the thing is that the dying person needs to express how they feel. And their feelings, they can have so many different feelings. Try to imagine yourself on that journey, how many things can be coming at you. You're maybe starting a life review in your head
Yeah.
where you're going over all the things that I didn't do in my life, all the things I did. And most of the time people will focus on the things they never did, or they'll feel guilt about things that they shouldn't have done, or feel shame about things. A lot of the time, it will not be pretty. Sometimes people do reflect on the wonderful things that happened in their lives, but that won't be everything that they focus on. And, they need to talk about that. They need to feel like somebody is empathic and understanding and willing to receive whatever they need to express. Because otherwise, as you say, they feel shut down, they feel patronized. And then they feel really lonely because they realize, I can't talk to this person anymore. I can't, I have nobody to talk to about this. You
Well, that's
never want to
a
leave.
horrible feeling.
Yeah, it's a horrible feeling. And so you should always be aware that whatever they're going through is the main event. It's not what's going through your head that's the main event.
Lucille,
And
what would you do with someone, for example, if you're really against chemotherapy and,
yes.
a loved one is gung-ho about doing it, and
Hmm.
you are dead set against it.
Yes.
Do you have any business trying to talk someone out of it, or is that
No,
no? It doesn't
no.
matter how close of a family member it is, doesn't matter who it is.
No, I think, if you're a family member and you're talking to, and your family member is dying of cancer, and you have a strong bias, you have to set that bias aside. And you have to do what we said earlier, which is, you might say something like, okay, so you want to do chemotherapy, okay. Do you need to talk about it? Would you like to discuss that? You ask permission first. Or is there any questions that you have about it? Or do you have any concerns? And then you just really listen.
Mhm.
You really listen because you want to be that person that the dying person sees as safe. You're safe to talk to. You're not going to beat them over the head for choosing the wrong treatment option, apparently.
Yeah.
You really have to exert a lot of discipline over yourself in these situations.
It's almost like
The
people need a course on how to,
Yeah,
like a
yes,
kind of a course
yes,
that people, so they can actually learn how to deal
how
with
to do
trauma.
that.
And
Yes,
it's really
I
interesting because,
so agree.
in all the TV shows and all the movies, when somebody has cancer, and then the solution is always chemotherapy, but they don't want it, and the whole family gets mad. No, you have to take the chemo because without it you will die. That's the only savior always, right? The only option. So they really get people brainwashed as to that being the only
Yes,
option, which we know it isn't. And
mhm,
but that's a topic for another discussion. But
yes,
it's really interesting how, and the other thing, just talking about movies and TV shows, they never, like, if you ever nurse someone who is at the end of their life and really going through terminal cancer, you will see that it is, it's not like what you see in the movies. When you see,
it's
like, you
not.
need to mentally really prepare for this. And
Yeah.
because when I was nursing, taking care of my mother-in-law, when she was diagnosed, and she died of stomach cancer, nothing in the world can prepare you for what you see and what you go
Mhm.
through. And
Yeah.
just this movie we watched the other day, the guy had terminal cancer and he was running 6 miles a day, and he looked in perfect health, vibrant, beautiful skin, just, stunning, right? That's not how people look. And when you watch these movies, or they with perfect makeup lying in bed, but
Yes.
it's
Yes.
not like that. There's a really,
Yeah.
really ugly side of cancer.
There is an ugly side.
And I
But that,
think,
Go ahead.
No, it's just to mentally prepare for that when you're dealing with a loved one. To know,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
if you didn't
You're
see them for a while, you could be so shocked when you see them.
shocked at how they look like they're, skeletal. They may be bruised. They may have lots of swelling. They may not look at all like they used to look. And then
And
there are like,
maybe don't show that on your face. Don't show the shock, or
yes, you don't
don't
show the
make comments
shock.
about the,
Yes,
appearance of
yes,
how you're looking, or oh, you're so skinny, are you eating, or like to stay away from those things that we would say to a
absolutely.
healthy person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And don't talk to other people in the room. Right? Because also this is really so unconscious is when a bunch of family members collect together and they go in together, and then one of them starts saying something totally inappropriate, and then there are side conversations happening where they don't realize how demeaning it is to the person in the bed who's hearing all of this stuff about, oh, maybe she should just eat some more protein, or, well, how did this happen? Didn't she take care of her? Like really inappropriate conversations happening at the bedside. The person themselves is helpless. They can't just get up and say, F you, get out of my room. They can't.
Yeah.
So you have to be very, very cautious that this is a very frail individual. You want to support them as much as possible, and you have to be so super conscious of your own behavior. Now,
Yeah.
the beautiful thing too that can happen though is if you, and sometimes this happens in relationships where there wasn't really a really good bond, but at the end, if you are a safe person to the person who's dying, you're safe, you're just respectfully listening, you're not overreacting to anything, that sometimes that can draw out beautiful things that the person may never have said to you before, or you couldn't say to them. But all of a sudden, you now have permission to say things like, I really did care for you. Sometimes I disapproved of your behavior, but I really did care for you. And I don't think I ever told you how much I cared for you. So you can have absolutely beautiful conversations like that too. It's if you are ready to go down that road,
Yeah.
if you're ready, right?
Yeah. And what I've also found is a lot of people when they're dying, they have their stories that they need to tell one final
Hell,
time. And it's so important for them to have someone that's listening. And it's usually,
yes,
the traumas, the pain, the people that
yes,
hurt them, they need to still
yes,
get that out. They need to get that out of
yes,
their system. I think that's
yeah,
so important. Lucille,
yeah.
so now we've talked about people that are dying of cancer, but let's talk about people who are surviving cancer, who had a
Mhm.
cancer diagnosis. They are very hopeful. They are on, they're working towards a recovery. How can we support someone like that?
Well, in many ways, I think that is easier because they have more capacity to, maybe be a little more assertive or, stand up for themselves or what have you. So, in my opinion, but you correct me if I'm wrong, if you have a different experience of it, I think it's easier to deal with those people because you can have a good back and forth discussion,
Mhm.
and again, the same rules apply. You don't bombard them with your opinions. You
Mhm.
don't, without asking them first. If you really feel there's something that might help them, ask first as to whether or not they want to hear it. Okay. And then you respect whatever their answer is, right?
Yes.
Um, with those people, again, they face the same issues, which is everybody's coming at them, projecting stuff on them, sometimes acting weird, and what you need to do is just be their ally and their support and say, yeah, I understand it must be hard when you've got all that coming at you. I really understand. And let them do whatever they need to do, even if it's like they have to eat a dozen bananas and stand on their head at a full moon and you
Yeah.
know, playing Metallica music in the background, whatever they
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah.
Whatever they want to do.
Don't judge.
Um, Yeah, don't judge. Don't judge. But it's okay also sometimes to ask them if you don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, and maybe you're disapproving. You can pull back and you can say to yourself, okay, let me just not project disapproval. Let me be humble and realize I don't understand why they've chosen to do this. So I will just ask. You know, Uncle Tom, I would love to understand why you decided to do this particular treatment. Are you okay telling me about that a little bit more?
Yeah.
And you will be surprised by how people are so relieved and so grateful that somebody's actually asking about them.
Yeah.
Like, well,
Yes.
what's going on with you in your journey here? And let me understand why you're doing what you're doing, and how is it feeling for you? And you just listen.
Yeah.
You just listen. That's it.
And I think it's also really important, like to avoid the blame game, well, you
Yeah.
put 2 packs a day, what were you expecting? And right? Or everyone told you not to
Yeah.
get it and then you had to go. But you know what I mean? Like, because
Yeah.
people also tend to do that, and that's
Yeah.
not helpful. I mean, it doesn't matter what your opinion is at that point or what they did to get there. It's, it doesn't really change the circumstance. It is what it is, and you have to do
Mhm.
the
Yeah. Yes,
best that you can
exactly.
with what you have.
Yes. And another thing that I think is a little quite sensitive, a lot of people have difficulty with this unless you're really close to the person who's dying, is sometimes you have to ask about touching,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
like sometimes, people are in their hospital beds or whatever, if they're in the position of dying, and the only people that touch them are the hospital or the palliative care staff. In some families, it's not a problem. It's not an issue. It depends on the culture of your family and how much affection is okay to be expressed physically. But sometimes people kind of shy away from touching people who are dying. And I think sometimes you might have to use your intuition and say to the dying one, listen, would you like me to hold your hand? Do you need me to, just, stroke your hair, or whatever. Or it could be something like giving them a foot massage,
Yeah,
which is so very comforting and soothing.
it
So
is.
touch is another way of communicating where you can just, be there gently soothing, without having to talk much at all, really.
Well, that's great, Lucille. I mean, I
Yeah.
know this is going to help a lot of people because we're getting this question from people now, and they just don't know how to relate to others, and especially because so many cases are happening. So now, like you said, it's affecting everyone's lives.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no way around it, and especially heartbreaking when it's happening to younger people. My
Yeah.
my parents just had a neighbor pass away who was in her 30s with a
Yeah.
baby
Yeah.
girl, and
Yeah.
breast cancer, and just went, and she
Oh,
fought so hard, and she really thought she was gonna pull through, and she didn't, and it's very, very difficult. And it's very difficult not just in what to say to her, but what to say to her family, what to say to the family afterwards, what to say to the husband who just lost everything, to the parents, that are losing younger people. It's absolutely heartbreaking. It's almost like we need to have a manual for people on
yeah.
how
Well,
to.
and I think just on a note here, just very quickly, when you are faced with someone who's lost a loved one,
Yeah.
the same thing really applies. And people always get afraid. They think, I don't know what to say.
Hmm.
And they think they
Yes.
have to say something perfect. And actually, when my mother was dying, it didn't matter to me if the person delivered some kind of statement in a really awkward way.
Yeah.
It was just as heartwarming because they tried, and they were trying. I didn't need people to give the perfect eulogy, or state the perfect condolence. it,
Yes.
it was just about, I'm really sorry, can I do anything to help? I mean, something really simple, really simple. It works every time. It's beautiful because it's heart to heart.
And is it important to reach out in person, Or is it enough to send a text message? What would you?
It depends on your relationship
Or
with the person, you know.
yeah,
And I would say that you kind of have to gauge it. You have to be intuitive about it and look into yourself. Text messages in general, I mean, they can be comforting, you know, people can feel well, this person cared, they at least sent a text message, and you know, so that's fine. But if you've got a close relationship with the person and all you do is send a text message, that's really painful.
yes, of course.
Right.
But I guess
Yeah.
you don't want to disturb them. You don't want to call at the wrong time. You don't know if they want to speak. You don't know if they want to be left
You
alone.
know, but the thing is, most people at least would like to know that people reached out.
Yeah,
They may not have the energy, they may not have the time to reach back,
yeah,
but it means a lot when somebody at least left a voicemail message.
absolutely.
It means a lot, right?
I agree.
And you can always circle back later in a couple of weeks and say, listen, are you okay?
Yeah,
I just wanted to follow up and find out how you're doing. Do you need any help, any support? That's like gold.
yeah.
That is really like gold.
And how often would you recommend after the fact that you would keep following up and checking in on them? Again, depends
Well,
on the relationship,
depends
right?
on the
Because
relate the call.
you might
Yeah,
check in daily,
exactly.
and then if it's a more distant friend or relative or something, maybe every few weeks or something like that, right?
Every few weeks, yeah, and you know, it doesn't have to be a big deal. It just you can in those cases sometimes just send a text message thinking of you. Hope
Yeah,
you're doing well. How are things going? Um, and at some point, you know, you do want to, you know, when you sense that they're kind of starting to go back out into the world, it's a lovely thing to say, invite them out for a beverage or, you know, lunch or
yeah,
something. It's really, really painful when your friends and loved ones drop you like a hot potato
yeah.
after the person has died. You
It's
know,
very sad. Yes,
yeah,
it
it
does
is sad.
happen. Yeah, especially like couples. When,
Yes, couples.
yeah, exactly. If your husband passes away and you guys were always hanging out as couples, and all of a sudden nobody's calling you, nobody's inviting you out, it's very sad.
Yeah,
People
yeah,
really need to be a lot more considerate.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, guys, that brings us to the end of this episode. Dr. Lucille and I made it through without crying, but it was a very emotional one. I mean, it's
Very
definitely a
emotional.
hard
Yeah,
topic to talk about. We've all been
yeah.
touched by it. More times than we care to count, and so
Hmm.
we understand and we feel your pain out there, and we hope that this will help make the burden a little bit easier in dealing with your loved ones and how to relate to them. I think the message from today is listen, you know,
Hmm.
listen more
Yeah.
than you talk. Um,
Hmm.
don't give your opinion unless it's asked, and
Hmm.
just be a rock for the person. That's the best thing that you can do. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for watching this. Please don't forget to like, subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, if you would give us a quick review, a quick 5-star review, we would be so grateful. It really helps so that this podcast reaches more people. We've got some incredible guests coming up for you guys. So stay tuned. We are super excited. Our calendar is getting really full, and one is more exciting than the other. It's just going to be mind blowing.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Rewilded Human podcast. We hope you're leaving with insights to reconnect with your natural, vibrant self. Remember, the information shared here is for educational and inspirational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for any personal health concerns. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit. We'll see you next time, ready to dive even deeper. Stay wild, stay true, and stay tuned.